Hello, everybody. It's me, Virginia, and we're back on this Tuesday to recap Real Housewives of Miami and Next Gen NYC. This will be it as far as reality TV. I hope I don't start going into withdrawals, but I'm really going to do my best to try and take this little break because I think it'll be good for me and it'll make me a better podcaster for you guys. For now, let's just go ahead and get started with Miami. I'm really liking Miami so far. I think that Miami might be the sleeper franchise, the franchise that was so. I went back and I watched Miami from its inception. After I saw, I think it was like season 5, whatever their comeback season was after the long hiatus. And I could understand why people didn't really care for it. It was really ostentatious and the storylines were silly and the arguments were shallow and, it was real first world problem-esque. But since it's come back, I think they have really gotten into the relationships and there's been real actual stuff that has happened. We've had a couple of cancer battles. We've had adoptions. We've had, of course, divorces, some more public than others. And so it's made the show interesting to me. Again, well, I always liked it, but I think for those of you who have slept on it, you might want to give it another chance, especially this summer. If you have nothing to do, it might be a good rewatch. Let's move on and talk about season 7, episode 2, Real Housewives of Miami. So they're going to Milan because Lisa has been invited to walk in Milan's Fashion Week, and so has Preston, Larsa's son. While Larsa tells it differently, she says that she was invited, but she was afraid to fall down, so she suggested her son Preston because Preston seems to be the artsy one of the group and has recently expressed an interest in modeling, so she thought she'd hook him up, and off they go. Lisa also is going, and she recognizes that she's walking amongst 18-year-olds, but to her, that means she's still got it. Okay, let's talk about Pilates. I've never done Pilates in a Pilates studio. I went to Pilates classes many years ago before they had all the cool machines and gadgets and all the likes. It, I hear, is very effective. I know that there are people who are very religiously dedicated to the art of Pilates and their practice of it. For me, it looks like a torture chamber. I don't know if it's the machines. I don't know what it is about it, but I wouldn't be opposed to trying it because I did like the Pilates class that I did take. Anyway, Julia and Alexia are at the Pilates class and they're talking about Larsa and Lisa's argument at Jody's party. And then they're asked about that awkward moment between Gertie and Martina and Julia. And Julia's explanation leaves me feeling like she's just really holding a grudge. And for some reason, she's just decided that she wants to beef with Gertie. Ever since Julia's joined the show, she comes across as the type of person who, maybe it's cultural, but for whatever reason, doesn't digest things the same way that most of us do, and for some reason finds the things that we just blow off really offensive and like friendship ending. We've seen her do this with Adriana. We've seen her do it in defense of Adriana. I don't know. I don't understand what it is about her. But then Julie asks Alexia how things are going with Todd, and she tells us that she spent the last 5 months trying to save her marriage and that now the ball's in his court. And I'm sorry, but Alexia is giving me desperate and sad in this moment. I think she's a beautiful, strong woman, and I don't understand why she turns into Jello at the mention of this clown's name. And I didn't dislike Todd until, well, yes, I did, because that thing he did with the 15-minute video apology on Instagram last season or season before, was completely cringeworthy. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google I don't know, maybe like Alexia's husband Todd's Instagram apology. You'll see what I'm talking about. At that point, I just, I thought that he was being thirsty for the show, but I think that he was having an identity crisis watching himself back on TV, and that might have been what's led to all the rest of what's going on between the two of them. Larsa's talking to Preston, and she says that she really hopes that they don't end up on the same plane as Lisa. So, of course, it turns out that they did end up on the same flight. I mean, how many flights are there from Florida to Milan arriving at the same time? Chances are they're going to end up on the same flight unless they go out of their way not to. Well, they do simultaneously arrive in Milan, and hilariously, thank you, production, they have to share a van. The guy standing there with with their last names on the sign, and they both realize that, damn it, it wasn't awkward enough that we had to fly together. Now we have to sit together. So, of course, because of the way the cameras are set up and the fact that Preston wants to bail out and sit in the front because he wants nothing to do with what's going to happen on the ride to the hotel, they end up sitting right across from one another. And then Jody sits down next to Lisa, and Lisa and he look at one another and both say, awkward. It was very awkward. Well, it doesn't take very long. Larsa tells us that, it's not going to be about her and that she doesn't want to argue. This is Preston's moment. Let's just let him have his moment. But of course, it doesn't take very long before Larsa is the one who brings up the fact that Lisa said, "What are you, Larsa?" And so Larsa uses the fact that Lisa complimented Preston and said something to the effect of, like, you must be really proud of him, to pivot and say that, yeah, that's exactly why I didn't understand why you asked, what am I, Larsa? Because if nothing else, I'm an amazing mother of 4 and so on and so forth. And she goes on to lay out all her accomplishments. And so, of course, Lisa's ready to fire back, and it starts to get a little heated. And then Jody chimes in and says that he didn't appreciate the way that Larsa treated him in his house on his birthday, and is clearly very hurt. Listen, Larsa is upset and she's hurt, but she's acting middle school, dude, not even high school. Lisa reminds Larsa that they were going to try to keep their emotions in check, and then she starts to go off again, but then Lisa is like, hello, Preston's here. Everybody bring it down. So Lisa tries to change the subject and talk about the fact that her dad is really sick and in the hospital and might not make it. And then Larsa uses it as an excuse to come down on her and tell her that she probably shouldn't have come to Milan and shouldn't be here. And do you think that's her place? I don't really think it's anybody's place to tell you how you should behave in your parents' last moments of life. But especially Larsa, because they've been friends for a long time. So Larsa knows that Lisa did not have an amazing relationship with her dad. And she should know, furthermore, that Lisa's probably struggling with this whole thing. So instead of coming from a place of love, she wants to come from a place of judgment. I think that says a lot more about Larsa than it says about Lisa. Gertie and her husband Russell go to see the surgeon, and the surgeon tells her that she needs more reconstructive surgery to correct some, issues that are going on as a result of the 5 rounds of chemo she's had, the 6 surgeries, and the 20 radiation treatments. That's a correction from the numbers that I mentioned last week. I think they were exaggerating, and I just took it as fact. But nonetheless, Russell's quite skeptical, and you can kind of tell by the look on his eyes, or in his eyes, that he's kind of been through the ringer. Going back a couple of seasons, Russell was like this bright-eyed, happy-go-lucky, super supportive, I'm just the fireman, this is my queen kind of a husband. And you can see the last couple of weeks have really taken a toll on him. So as far as I'm concerned, I have no comment or opinion on Gertie's choices for her body. And nobody else should have any either. I can't even imagine what it must feel like to not feel normal. That's what she says. I don't feel normal. I feel like she has an amazing spirit. I feel like she's a beautiful woman. with the gorgeous body, and I think she's handled this with grace and dignity. But we don't live inside of her head, so we don't have any right to stand in judgment. But listen, that Russell, he's a special one for sure. He supports everything she wants and he loves her unconditionally to pieces. I just find their relationship super touching. I hope that it's genuine. It comes across that way, but I'm going to be really bummed out if we find out later that, they're struggling or that there's stuff going on behind the scenes. So I'm going to move on because I don't even want to put that out there into the universe. Well, guess what, guys? Marisol and Boo Bear Steve are having sushi and sake and talking about having a courthouse wedding to make things really official, even though they've already had like 2 or 3 weddings. Apparently, they're not legally married, but they're going to, and Marisol tells us that she is thrilled. She thinks that there'll be a new sense of security, and these two are just super, super cute together. Maybe she finally found her one, you guys. I think Boo Bear might be it for her. Steve and Marisol get to talking about Alexia and Todd, and Marisol says she does not like Alexia with Todd at all. She says he brings the worst out in her and that she is concerned about them reconciling. She says she's been stressed and difficult, and recently she's seen her friend back. Marisol says that she wants her friend to be happy, but doesn't think that Todd's the man for her. Let's take a minute and talk about people who have terrible home lives, and then instead of dealing with it, they pretend everything's fine, and they project all that crap that they endure at home onto everybody else in the universe and to those people that aren't the cause. So we all know somebody like this, right? They have a crappy home life, but they don't want to do anything to fix it. So instead, they just spread their toxicity throughout the universe. People, don't do this to the people you love. We may not be saying anything because we love you. And so we're just going to try to love you through it. And then some of us will just kind of ghost you or fade away and radiate. But honestly, nobody likes being put in that position, and nobody likes being the target practice for the lack of conviction you have to fixing what might be toxic in your own life. So let's work on it, people. Oh, Virginia, I fear you may be on a soapbox of sorts today, so let's go back to Milan and talk about Larsa and Preston. As they're getting settled into their room, which is very pretty, by the way, Larsa tries to explain her case to Preston about, her beef with Lisa, and Preston's not having any of it. He tells her not to get involved. Good job, Preston. These kids, they're really just super smart and super cut to the chase and cut right through the bullshit and like, Mom, it's not your beef, just don't get involved. And oh, by the way, we're supposed to be here about me. He doesn't say that. I'm saying that, Larsa. Well, in Lisa and Jody's room, they're discussing the fact that Larsa had no business chiming in about Lisa's dad. Didn't I just say that right now? I agree with you guys. But I couldn't help but be stuck on how much Preston looks like Scotty. Doesn't he look like his daddy so much? So they're at the fitting for the fashion show, and I think Jason, that's the assistant's name, he gives Preston a Melanian-style tongue lashing about his fashion choices and his shoe tie styles, and he uses this one scene that he has to take several stabs at U.S. fashion. Don't think that was lost on me. Back in the States, Alexia, Marisol, Julia, Kiki, and Alexia's friend Johnny, who moved to Madrid a year ago, show up because Alexia wants to have a dinner for him, so she surprises him with a few of his friends, and of course leaves Adriana and Gertie out of the invitation. And then there's a lot of unnecessary talks about dicks, which I don't understand. And also I just unnecessarily mentioned. And then they move on to Alexia's talk about she and Todd's impending divorce. She tells us that the courts are pushing them to make a decision in the stagnant divorce proceedings because it's been 6 months and there's been no motion, no movement. She tells us that all of the issues that they are having are because of the show, that Todd originally liked the show, but I guess he didn't like the way he was portrayed or how he saw himself, and now he was upset. that he couldn't control the narrative. She tells us that she offered to step down from the show even because of how much she loves Todd and how much her family means to her, but Todd told her it was too late already. Marisol is pissed, and you can see her whole attitude shifts in this moment, and she sees her friend being manipulated. But then Alexia is starting to finally open her eyes, and as the people are talking to her at the table, she realizes, you could see the light bulb kind of go on, and she realizes that she's being manipulated and that it's not the show that Todd is upset about. It's the power that the show gives Alexia that pisses Todd off. And then she starts to get pretty activated and says that he's not being accountable for anything. So something must have happened that made her ultimately decide that she was going to bring all of this to camera and read Todd, because she tells us that she's been living a life in a fake rented apartment and a fake rented car, and it's just a ruse. Nothing belongs to them. And she's not bashing him, that it's simply the truth. And Marisol's just beside herself with delight, I am sure. She's covering her face with this humongous smile behind it. And I agree. I think that this was the breaking point. I don't know what it took, Alexia, but I'm glad that if this is the way he was treating you for 6 months, that you finally opened your eyes, girl. Is it true? Marisol says everybody gets a narc at one point. A narc, N-A-R-C. Back in our days, a narc was a narcotics officer, and it was slang for when you snitched on someone. You would narc on someone. Apparently, and according to Marisol, narc is now short for a narcissist. So is it true? Does everybody get a narc in their life at one point or another? You'll have to tell me. Sophia in the Design District in Miami is an Italian restaurant, and that's where they are having this dinner for Johnny. Guess what, guys? I stand corrected. They're eating in Miami this season. Maybe it's because there's guys that join the group, but for whatever reason, I did hear ordering of burrata for sure, and then the duo branzino. So I was curious, and I looked at their menu to see what duo branzino meant, and then I realized that it's probably just Johnny trying to be fancy, ordering 2 branzinos, because there is no duo branzino on the menu. But Alexia finally says what everybody else at the table is thinking, that how Todd left was like a coward, and how he is handling the divorce is like a coward. And then Julia reminds Alexia that Todd moved out and left Frankie sitting on the couch. Well, that's it. That's what finally sets her over the top. And she says, you know what? Fuck him. And starts crying because she realizes that she's attracted to a fucking asshole. And the moment of realization seems to be pretty organic and caught on camera. But to be fair, and I don't want to be fair to Todd in this moment, but can we just remember that when Todd and Alexia met, she'd already been on the show, but they met during the really long hiatus when there was no promise of the show ever coming back. So maybe they fell in love without the show being a factor, and then it became the factor. But you know what? I'm going to correct myself. Nope, I'm Team Alexia, because she just mentioned in this very scene that she offered to quit the show for him, and he said it was too late. So it seems to me like she was willing to do whatever it took to save this marriage, and he wasn't. Maybe he is a narc. Back in Milan at the Philip Plein show, Lisa and Preston are backstage getting ready, and then Jody awkwardly joins Larsa, where she's sitting with, I think the guy was named Jeremy or Jeffrey or something like that. And of course, we did need a little drama, so we find out that with Preston coming in number 2, according to the designer Philip, he basically opened the show. And then, of course, Larsa has to shout out that Lisa was number 50. Okay, Larsa, whatever. So Lisa comes out, and why did that happen? Why did Larsa find the need to start doing selfies with her bedazzled friend while she's walking. I found it rude and lowbrow and desperate. And I don't understand how she can consider herself a loyal friend and be talking shit about how terrible of a friend Lisa's being, that her boyfriend is sitting at a table with her ex, where she's literally being filmed, being lowbrow and childish to her friend. So, Larsa, I hope that watching this back, you have a different take on it, dude, because it did not come across very flattering at all. And honestly, I don't know who y'all think won on this one, but I know who lost. Preston. Larsa literally shit all over his moment with her ridiculous antics. And note to self, I need to buy a selfie light for our Europe trip. I'm sorry, but listen, I got a lot of things on my mind here, guys. Well, I take notes in the moment. So the thoughts that I say while I'm podcasting, I'm basically reading back my notes or at least kind of paraphrasing by them. And I'm doing it in the moment. So as I watch to solidify my point, when they come back from break, Larsa tells us that Preston wouldn't have gotten there without her and that she wasn't sure he was going to do well, but he killed it. Way to capture the moment, Mom. Why is Larsa getting such a mean girl edit? I guess every housewife show needs their villain. You're it this year, Larsa. Poor Fabulous, the rapper from New York. Well, they're at the after party, and I guess he gets involved. Of course, he was probably going to do so, but he was probably urged by the producers. And then, he's talking to them, and little by little, they start to get into what they're beefing about, and he seems to hear them both out. And then we get the cutaways, and ultimately, the takeaway was that each girl came away thinking that Fabulous was on their side. So, well done, Fabulous. And then as the show comes to an end, you guys, Jody turns up missing. So Lisa and Larsa seem to have buried the hatchet for the moment. They talk about the fact that they're going to have to talk when they get back. And then Lisa says, but I just want to have fun tonight. And then Larsa says, where's Jody? And she says, I don't know. He's his own man. She basically explains that he's a little butthurt because he wasn't getting any attention. So we see the black screen with the white letters, and we find out that Jody turns up missing. The camera shut down for the night, but the tension between Larsa, Lisa, and Jody didn't end. So it looks like it's next week's preview that Larsa is at a table with all of the girls telling them about Milan. And she talks about how the last night with Jody got crazy. And somebody asked at the table if his eyes were big. And then we get to see a picture of Jody. Well, let's just say I understand why he wants to hang out with Marcus, allegedly. And it's safe to say that the photo is giving Aaron from the Valley vibes. Deduce what you will, and we'll see what happens. So that's it for that episode. I'll catch you up on where we are when I come back from my reality TV break, but let's move right on into Next Gen NYC episode 3. I'm still loving this show. It's giving tons of content for podcasters and a lot of side commentary, I guess, is how I will put it. So a lot of times you find yourself just covering exactly what happened on the show, and there's not really a lot to talk about. I'm not getting that with Next Gen NYC. Let's get into it. Everything I thought I was going to hate about this show is what I'm loving about this show. For example, I adore Ariana Bierman so far. Who would have thunk it? She's funny, she's self-aware, she's candid, she's self-deprecating. I really, really am digging this girl. And her relationship with Hunter, super cute. In other news, is bird poop falling on you good luck? Are you one of those who believe it? So funny, I Googled it just for shits and giggles to see what AI would say. And AI says that although it is culturally accepted in some places, there is no scientific evidence to back up the fact that bird poop on a person is lucky. You gotta love AI. In this episode, Gia's gonna have a party and is inviting everyone. And we see Brooke catching Ava up on the events that happened between Charlie and Ariana. If you listen to the last recap, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, then either watch the show or, better yet, listen to the last podcast with my recap. But it was a shit show. It didn't end well. Listening to Charlie bring Ava up to speed reminds me of listening to kids talk during high school. It is true. Guys do end up being better friends after they tussle it out a few times. I remember, hearing the kids talk when they'd have their friends over and they'd say, yeah, so-and-so, and then so-and-so fought so-and-so, and 3 days later, so-and-so would be at our house, or so-and-so was the new buddy that they were going to go, hang out with at the mall. I don't know, you guys. Sometimes I feel like these guys have it right. Sometimes we women just complicate and overcomplicate things. Don't tell my 4 boys and my husband, please. Good old Seth Brooks. This guy is definitely intent on making a splash. I guess that's the way I'll put that. Yeah. And the golf intensive that he used to send poor Brooks to. What the fuck is a golf intensive? Well, if you ask Brooks, he called it a golf intensive, not a golf camp, because it was intense. You guys, I wasn't really fond of Brooks on Salt Lake. I didn't like the way they portrayed him. He seemed kind of like he was being used as a token. But I'm loving Brooks on this show. And breaking news, Brooks has a boyfriend. His name is Cade. And they have the cutest little clip that they show of them decorating the apartment. And can I just talk about the fact that I'm really loving the production value of this show? I love the graphics, the stickers, the little cutaways. I just find it fresh and fun. And I digress, but have you ever considered vacuuming your stove? I never even thought about it, but I have that attachment and that might be the way to go. Like, say what you will, but Brooks might not have the worst idea in the world. He might be onto something. Okay. 2-part question. 1, would you discuss your sex life with your father? And 2, is it true that men actually strive to be as loved by their children as they perceive the mom is loved by said children? Not rhetorical. You can answer or think about it or ponder it or not. I can tell you my answer. Well, I can't tell you my answer to the second one because I'm not a father. And I just automatically assume that my kids love me substantially more than they love their father. Just kidding, honey. Anyway, talking about my sex life with my dad? Well, I never have. And at this age, I don't think I would hesitate to. But I don't think he's the first person that I would go to. I don't know. I think that we have a lot of stigmas that need to be broken. But by the same token, I think that in this moment, Seth Marks is giving me a little bit of cringe. Clearly, he's trying to stay relevant with the lingo and asking Brooks about his body count, etc. I find it troubling. I have kids that age, and I think you're embarrassing your son, Seth. To be fair, that is also part of your charm, but I would dial it down a little bit if you're going to make any other appearances on this show. Just a little input from a fellow empty nester. They're at a Top Golf in the city, and it looks like the balls are going into the water. It looks like a really cool location. Maybe one of these days I'll get to try that Top Golf with my son. But Brooks is telling his dad about his sister Chloe's date with his friend Charlie. And he tells him about what was said in the text and the concerns about him being inappropriate. So Seth decides that it would be a good time to shit on Charlie's dad's fathering and his skills as a father, and offers to step in and counsel poor lost Charlie, who, by the way, is 29 years old. This whole scene was eye-opening And I found it hilarious. I don't understand why this guy felt the need to step in. And I suspect that Mr. Anwar is not going to be pleased when this airs. And I don't want to give Gia's mom any airspace on my pod, so I will move on. Suffice to say, she's loaning her house to the kids for the party. And then Gia tells us at least there's no taxes in Jersey as part of her explanation as to why she hates the city, amongst other reasons. The editing note on the screen says New Jersey has the second highest average property taxes in the country. Oh, Gia, you're just a chip off the old block. I'm going to reserve judgment for now. I know that sounded sarcastic, but I really am going to reserve judgment for now because, I mean, look how I feel about Ariana. Who knows? I may end up loving Gia, but again, chip off the old block. Charlie meets his mom, Liz, and her boyfriend, Ivar, for lunch. My first take on mom is flower child. This girl gives hippie vibes. She gives everything's cool, and it helps me understand Charlie that much better almost instantly. Charlie's explanation of the relationship seems pretty strange and kind of toxic even. Sorry, at the risk of saying that. But he tells us that essentially she didn't really have any interest in mothering him. So after the age of 10, he went to go live with Anwar. And then they move on and they start talking about one of Liz's old boyfriends that Ivar knew, and all of that to say, I have a question. Is it true? Is there always a hint of mint in those Englishmen? Well, I'm not a man or English, so I can't help you with that one. But if anybody knows, let me know. We see pictures that Liz saved. She has these pictures on her phone that she saved they're of drawings that Charlie drew when he was a kid. And damn, you guys, looking at the pictures is a deep look into this kid's head. It's like pictures, like stick figures of who he says that's a drawing of dad with a gun to his head and a knife to his throat or something like that. Wow. Those are some dark, deep thoughts for a young kid, but whatever. Charlie tells us that in his head, he compares his dad to the dad on Succession. My favorite part of this whole scene, and one of my favorite things about this show, is how likely and casually they break the fourth wall. Because Charlie says, I better be careful. He might cut me off when this airs. So they're at Brooks's apartment with his friend Dylan, and Riley shows up and they're sewing. And as a parent of full-blown grown children, the conversation that Brooks starts about whether or not they are on their own phone bill and the fact that being on your own phone bill indicates that you are really an adult. Is that really how you guys think? I find this hilarious. Things have really, really changed, you guys. I had my own phone bill since I got my own landline at 16. And eventually my first huge block cell phone, pay by the minute, remember back then? So at the risk of completely aging myself out of this conversation and out of podcasting about this show, I should probably move on. There's so much content in this short little show that we could just go on and talk forever about all of these little things. But can we talk about that feeling of not having a phone? That feeling you feel when you lose your phone and you can't communicate with anyone and you're completely lost. Like, shit, suddenly you can't remember your husband's phone number. You can't remember your login for your banking. Everything just kind of goes dark and it's really scary. I can't help but wonder how we became this dependent and remind everyone out there that we all survived without cell phones just a mere 20 or so years ago, guys. We hear from Georgia, who tells us that she thinks it's unfair for Charlie to expect unwavering loyalty to him, even if she genuinely likes Ariana and Hudson. Georgia, I'm on your side. I agree, and I don't think that a friend should not be somebody else's friend because somebody said they don't like that person. I think everybody has the right to choose who they want to be friends with, how they spend their time, and that's entirely their business, and they can still be a good friend to you. I understand the part about loyalty, and that would apply if Ariana and Hudson had actually done something to Charlie, but he just decided he didn't want to like them and nobody else should like them either. I call bullshit on that. Thankfully, we find out that Charlie did apologize to Ariana and Hudson, and so all's well that ends well. And is it true that these days 20-somethings are more interested in staying home than going out and clubbing? Well, except for Georgia. And have you ever been that friend that gets stuck with someone because everybody else ditches the group? Again, so many things to discuss about this show. You see what I mean? I can make a question out of almost every scene, and we could probably drag this episode on for hours. I'm not going to do that, but you have to admit that it's true. There's a lot of content to be had here. The awkward phone call that Seth makes to Charlie to ask him out, I can't. Stay strong, brother? What in the hell? Well, Mr. Seth Marks, you certainly are having your moment, are you not? During the lunch, he announces his intentions to Charlie to try to achieve pansexuality. Unbeknownst to Meredith Marks, I am sure, who is probably somewhere back in Utah in a rented home, no shade, just fact. Okay, a little bit of shade. Obviously eating her fabulous caviar. And is Charlie really a dick, or does he just not think before he speaks? And he's just like a misguided, kind human being. I don't know. I'm sure that we have people on each side of that argument, but I do find it very interesting that Charlie, it's funny. Charlie keeps alluding to, I'm just my hangover, man, like the hangover. And he keeps bringing that back up, and apparently and allegedly in hopes that Seth will let him off the hook and that he won't have to have this meeting at all. But alas, Charlie, it is not to be. So Charlie is supposedly objectifying women, and Seth is playing both sides as he strikes me as a person. Honestly, to me, Seth is giving me, I just want to be popular. And he seems to be perfectly happy leaning into the fact that he is older, but that he never wants to get older. I almost find that more cringe than the person who has Peter Pan syndrome who is unaware of it. I don't know. Seth, I felt you were out of line to bring up Anwar's relationship with his son Charlie. I don't think it was your place. So they're all in this van and they're headed to Gia's house, Gia's mom's house in New Jersey. And let's have a conversation about the angry black woman stereotype thing that happened in the van. So first, I need to tell you, for anybody who doesn't know, I'm half black and half Mexican, or the one other way around, 6 of one, half dozen or the other. It doesn't matter. And I may not have the same take that you guys might expect me to have. I am appalled with Charlie's minimizing of Riley's feelings, but at the same time, I don't understand why Riley is going so hard. So it all starts off because Riley's feeling a little salty that Charlie and his friends left with some girls and left her stranded with a drunk and phoneless Georgia. Charlie contends that Riley was mean to the girls that he was entertaining. Riley says that's not true and that she was just introducing herself because Charlie didn't. And then Charlie does this neck thing with the finger thing and the pursed lips, and it just triggers Riley and me, if I'm being honest, because Riley was not behaving that way. So she gets emotional and she says that she refuses and does not want to be portrayed as some big mean black girl. Charlie says he doesn't think that the girls being white had anything to do with it, And then Riley points out that Charlie was mocking black women mannerisms and so on and so on. And the whole damn conversation starts to head south. Riley's activated. She's crying. She says she doesn't like the narrative. And then Charlie starts to like realize that he's probably in over his head and starts to weasel his way out of the conversation. She's not letting go and he's not getting it. So Ava tries to kind of step in and explain it to all of us. And tells us that it's about the microaggression that she might be feeling on a daily basis, and that Charlie's just not aware that he's contributing to the problem. So I guess what it is that we've just found a way, or, you know, the 20-somethings of these days have just found a way to articulate something that we just dealt with back in my day. Like, it wasn't something that we were able to talk about and educate our friends about. And I don't know if that's bad or good. Honestly, on the one hand, I think it's amazing that we're having these conversations. On the other hand, I think that sometimes we women of color, our skin has become a little too thin. Please don't come at me for this. But I think that sometimes we just need to not make everything a microaggression. So I have mixed feelings about this whole conversation, but I'm going to move on and focus on something that really cracked me up. They get to Gia's party, and one of the first things they all do is bring their laundry, because it's so damn expensive to do laundry in New York. So I found that really hilarious, because my son, who has his very own perfectly good house with his very own perfectly good washer and dryer, when he was home on Father's Day last weekend, did a load of laundry at our house. Nonetheless, I can't help but wonder if it's one of those comfort things where they just like sleep better at home, and maybe the clothes just launder better when they're at home. I don't know. Well, at Gia's mom's house, she sets up this I thought the party was really cute. She did a card reader, and she had like a drink menu, and she had homemade mozzarella being made, and they were going to do their own pizzas, and of course their own laundry in the laundromat-sized laundry room. So everybody's getting settled in, and Riley steps away to call her mom Candy and tells her about the whole finger-wagging, lip-piercing behavior that she encountered on the way up with Charlie. And Riley says that she's heard slurs and comments throughout her life, but never from someone that she considers a friend. So Candy's frustrated for her daughter, and she essentially tells Riley that Charlie's just going to have to learn to deal with black women, and that it might be Riley who has to teach him. So that's where that conversation ends. Brooks goes over and kind of consoles her a little. But then Charlie pulls Riley aside again to apologize. And Riley accepts the apology. And listen, it seems really legit. But we find out that a few seconds later, Charlie tells Georgia that he didn't mean his apology. That's just so fucking shitty. Can somebody please tell me why Thirsty has to FaceTime when all the kids are trying to have a get-together, just to tell them how to make pizza and to announce that she's watching them through the cameras? You see what I mean? This is why I can't stand this woman. Thirsty as fuck. Ew. George and her friend Cooper immediately tell Ava about Charlie's no apology confession. And then they have to, Georgia and her friend have to head out to a crypto event. I love that these kids go to crypto events. So, of course, Ava runs over and tells Riley that Charlie's apology wasn't genuine. And Riley's actually very hurt, with good reason. So, why Charlie decides he's going to go join the group, it gets awkward for a little minute, and then Riley gets pissed off. Ava is asked to intervene. And Riley pretty poignantly articulates how two women can both be black and their experience can be completely different. She says she's bigger and she's darker and she's from the South, and Ava is lighter skinned and smaller and from the city. And those are two different experiences. And honestly, you guys, I think that it's a good opportunity and a good teaching moment for America. But I don't think that this is something that is going to change the world on, the heels of this reality TV show giving us this teachable moment. So let's hope that some of these kids picked it up. Charlie said he did, but clearly he doesn't get it, or he wouldn't have had a fake apology. Riley confronts Charlie, and he does say that he didn't really mean the apology. And so Riley basically is just over it, and she gets up and she walks away. And Ava tries to reason with Charlie, but he says he's done with the conversation. He's kind of annoyed that now Ava's mad at him. So right on cue, just like last week, he leaves. And of course, the psychic tries to intervene and see if she could maybe just have a talk with him. And he politely declines, even though you'll remember the psychic said that she was actually feeling called to talk to him. So she offers to light a candle for him instead. And that brings up a whole other conversation. You see what I mean? So I'm a Catholic woman, and I have from time to time in my life offered to light a candle for someone if they're going through something. But when I heard the psychic tell Charlie that she was going to light a candle, it came across a little creepy. And it made me start to think, if somebody tells you that they're lighting a candle for you, do you find that kind or weird? It occurred to me that maybe at some point in my life, someone has thought that when I have offered to do that, it was weird. So I don't know, just food for thought, some of the things that go through my head when I watch these shows. But that's how the episode ends. And I think that some of the things I find so refreshing is how they regularly break the fourth wall, and just the fact that they're candid and that they're having real conversations and that they're not afraid to tell each other that they're full of shit. And by the way, I feel like the house that they had the party in is absolutely gorgeous. Good luck holding on to it, y'all, but I throw shade. And that's probably how this podcast episode is going to end with regards to reality TV, because that was it for Next Gen NYC. Let's talk about what to pack when you're traveling. Well, guys, it's getting closer. It's time to start thinking about what to pack for Europe. And I'm starting to panic. Like, oh my gosh, do I have this? Do I need to order that? Amazon is, probably increasing their stock value based on just my purchase history alone in the last few weeks. But it occurred to me that I'm not alone in this. And there are so many resources on the internet that tell you what to pack for this and that and the other. But essentially, it's all the same, right? Pack what you think you're going to need. So I'm talking to my friend who we're going on this trip with last night, asking her questions about, the trip in general. And she shot over this list that she uses. She crosses out everything that she doesn't need for this particular trip and uses it kind of as a master for all the trips she goes on. And then she just checks off the other things that she is taking as she packs them. And what I thought was the funniest part of this whole thing was that at the bottom, it says, pack half as much as you think you'll need and twice as much money. I hope that's not true, because I don't want to bring twice as much money. And the half as much is good advice, especially in this case, because we're going to have access to laundry and all of those things. So you really can repeat. And one of the best pieces of advice I've gotten with regards to this European cruise/trip is that we should kind of stick to the same color family and then bring things that you can mix and match with one another. It's Europe, it's summer, it's going to be warm. I checked, it's not going to be quite as warm, but who knows? We're still a little ways away. So I'm going to go ahead and post a link to this cool little handy dandy sheet that my friend Susan sent me. And I am going to tell you that there are a few things in particular for this trip that I think that are not on this list that you should consider. So if you're traveling for any length of time, so I consider that anything more than say 5 or 6 hours, and you're not spending the extra thousands and thousands it's going to cost you to get a flat laying seat in first class or business class or whatever. Invest in a $20 inflatable footrest. They have them on Amazon, and apparently, I just ordered mine, so I can't vouch for it yet, but apparently they're really easy to blow up, and they actually they have the kind that become 3 different layers, so you can have it shorter, so you could just kind of rest your feet a little higher, and then all the way up to where it becomes level with your seat, which is really great for traveling with children because it actually would become big enough for a bed for them. But if you're a smaller person, you could probably, sleep pretty comfortable. And if not, you could certainly, if you're a side sleeper, you could probably make that work. So I would definitely invest in that. Of course, if you're going to be on a long flight, our flight is 14 hours, then compression socks are probably a good idea, just because it's going to make recovering when you get off of the plane a lot easier. A lot of IV liquid would be good. Bring a few of those packs in your carry-on. Don't forget your adapters and your converters. If you're going to Europe, it's a whole different system there, different voltage, different plugs. Your regular old 2 or 3 prongs are not going to work if you're in the US. And I, this time, wanted to make sure that I invested in those straps that you put on your suitcase because my luggage is pink and I thought it was quite unique until I went to LAX and I realized it wasn't very unique. So hopefully the combination of the straps and the luggage will be enough for me to be able to pick my luggage out amongst the many. But more importantly, those straps really do help you get those things off and on. So, lift them here and there and everywhere. So I think that it's a good investment. I think they were only like $9 and it came in a set of 4. And then one of the things that I would really encourage you to do is take your calendar and dump your itinerary onto your calendar so that it'll be on your phone and you can make changes right on your phone. You could send it to your friends electronically. You can share it with whoever you might be traveling with. And I thought that, that was probably a handy dandy piece of advice that I just kind of started thinking about as I was getting my stuff ready. Well, that's it for the travel tip. I honestly need to stop talking about it and get off of the podcast and go do some of this so that I can start to get ready for what's ahead for us. But I can tell you that I did spend the day with my oldest son, Corey, and we went on a taco crawl back in the old hood. I'm from East LA, but I raised my kids primarily in Whittier and La Mirada. And so we went back to Pico Rivera and Whittier yesterday, and we hit up 4 of the old taco places that we used to frequent, and we will have that on a podcast coming up here real soon. So I will leave you with that. I hope you have a really great week. I appreciate your listening as always. Have a great day. Bye.